we need to build relationships across race and address some of those divides between us. And so we understand that it's daunting maybe, but it's not impossible. And so in Just Action, we give several examples of communities that have taken some intentional efforts, some intentional steps to bring people together from segregated parts of the same city to get to know each other and build some social relationships. And that's what's necessary. We have to sort of start to break down those divides, get to know each other, learn that we're actually not that different. We want the same things out of our neighborhoods, the same things for our kids. And then from those social relationships, we can start to build this local movement. So then once these groups are formed, we describe in Just Action dozens of policies and strategies and programs that those local groups can advocate for in their own communities. And I'll just say that, I also often get a lot of questions in these forums about, I get that there's a lot we can do, but what's the one thing we should do? And I'll say that there is no one thing. The one thing is anything. There are so many things that we can do to start to address this issue that if we're waiting for the perfect solution that will have the most impact, that's an excuse to do nothing. And so that's why we give so many examples of what we can do and how we can start to make changes. And just like there were so many pieces that went into creating segregation, so many different policies, programs, actors that went into creating the segregation, it's going to take just as many to undo it. So we just have to get started with those. So the policies and programs we describe, they do two things. They look to the future, like the Fair Housing Act does, to ensure that we don't continue to perpetuate and create segregated communities, changing the policies we need to change to ensure that we don't continue to do that. And then they also need to look to the past. We need to address the disparities that exist today that are a consequence of segregation. Because the wealth gap, like I described, we can't address the consequences of those government actions that created the wealth gap by only looking to the future. We have to address the disparities that exist today and the consequences of segregation to truly live up to this obligation we have to redress segregation. So then the strategies we describe, they fall into two main categories. The first category are those that are concerned with increasing investment in lower income, segregated, predominantly African American communities, where the concentration of poverty is a direct result of government-sponsored segregation. So to remedy the segregation of those communities, we want to make those areas of higher opportunity, better access to resources and opportunity, cleaner air, better resourced public schools, better public services, better access to jobs, transportation, grocery stores, banks. These are, high opportunity communities. We want to make those areas that have suffered the consequences of segregation to be able to enjoy the benefits of higher investment. Now we understand that often when that happens, when a lower income community sees an increase in resources and investment, what happens? Often people with higher incomes suddenly become interested in living there. They move in, they drive the prices up, gentrification occurs. The longtime residents of those areas are priced out of their own communities just when they're starting to see increased investment and resources there. So these strategies to increase investments in these communities should be coupled with anti-displacement strategies. These are strategies that help prevent some of the displacement that can occur when gentrification happens. So things like protections for renters against rapidly increasing rents or unjust evictions, or right to counsel programs that provide free legal representation to tenants facing evictions. Because often, as I'm sure everyone in this room is familiar, when prices go up and landlords see an opportunity to make more money renting their units to higher paying tenants, they'll come up with any reason they can to get rid of their lower paying tenants. And so we want to protect those tenants from those unjust reasons and unjust evictions. We can also pass inclusionary zoning laws. These are locally passed ordinances passed through planning codes that require that when new housing is built in a community, a certain percentage of the units have to be reserved as affordable to lower or moderate income households. So often in gentrifying communities, there's a lot of housing being built in those communities, so an inclusionary zoning ordinance would ensure that at least some of that new housing that's being built is affordable. And we go a step further and say that those new units being built should also have preferences or priorities put on them to ensure that the longtime residents of those communities who are at risk of displacement have priority to accessing those new units.